And hello again from WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. I'm Josh Manning, Deputy Managing Editor for Assignment at the Western Journal. Joining me on the show today, Michael Austin, Supervising Reporter for the Western Journal, and Tara Snyder, who is a newly minted Assignment Editor.
Yep.
Welcome to you both.
How long will she be newly minted? When does she become
I don't know. When the new wears off.
Yeah,
When
exactly.
the new wears off.
I guess.
I don't know. When she breaks her first massive story, that's when.
Oh,
that's
all
when.
right.
Oh.
Yeah,
First
her
time you get a
yeah.
story that gets over 300,000 in reach, maybe. 300,000 page views, not reach. 300,000 reach you can do standing on your head. Anyway, welcome back to the show. Hope you're having a good Wednesday. Lots of stuff going on here at the newsroom today. As usual, we got three pieces that we want to talk with you about. Three topics that are out in the news right now that we think we can have a good discussion on and really kind of inform where the discussion in the country is politically and culturally. Tara is going to be talking with us about issues related to the recent SCOTUS ruling on the Texas abortion law. That conversation is going to include transgenderism and really going all the way back to women's suffrage and what that looks like and how all of this stuff plays together into the fight today on abortion. Michael will be talking about a memorial service or a memorial that was set up for the 13 men and women of the military who were killed in Afghanistan and what happened to that when some anti-American folks got a hold of it. And then we're also going to be talking about you folks. We're going to talk about what group is most likely to accurately predict COVID outcomes. We looked at, there's polling that looked at conservatives versus liberals, well, Republicans versus Democrats,
Yep.
CNN viewers versus Fox viewers, and broke it up all sorts of different ways. And I think you will be pleased with who is most likely to have a firm grip on the realities of COVID. But first off, Tara, take it away.
All right, so I kind of have a complex topic today because there are so many things I have to say when it comes to abortion and just that kind of topic in general, because it truly is a hijacking of femininity from a biblical level. So sitting at this table, we all agree here that God and Jesus Christ is the one who is the Savior in our lives, and He is the one from whom we get our rights. But the left will tell you that you are your own God and that your rights come from the God of self. And so as we're looking at the news cycle lately, we've seen a lot of things in the news about abortion and what's been going on there. And of course, with Texas and the heartbeat bill, we've seen that develop. And even just this past weekend, Mexico, the Supreme Court has ruled that abortion is now legal there. So what we're seeing is a broader trend across just North America where we are losing this idea of the sanctity of life. And for those of you who aren't aware, the Texas heartbeat bill had a lot more controversy because people were relying on the Supreme Court to kind of bash that down. But the reason that it gets away from the Supreme Court is because it gives the power to the citizens. So it allows private citizens to sue each other over abortion rather than focusing on the state having power over it. So it really is a brilliant law, and I know Michael and I were kind of talking about that today.
It's crazy how it circumvents, all that Supreme Court precedent. You don't have to worry about Planned Parenthood v. Casey. You don't have to worry about Roe v. Wade. It gets around all of that by just putting the power in the hands of the citizens. So
yeah. And so of course everyone's mad because they did it legally and there's not any actual true problems with the law. But it is really funny, I think, that we suddenly remember basic biology and suddenly remember that there's only two genders as soon as abortion comes around. I mean, every other day we can talk about chest feeding and birth-giving persons, but at least within the last week or so, we've just been reminded that women are women, which is an odd blessing to have.
And that men have no right in that discussion.
Yes.
Oddly enough,
None.
men who can now, according to the left, be birthing persons, they don't have any standing on this.
Even male birthing persons, I wonder.
Even male birthing
who knows?
persons. Yeah,
maybe
I
they
mean,
do. Maybe they don't.
My Facebook newsfeed was filled with liberal or leftist women who were making the same claim that just my body, my choice, men can't tell me what to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I mean, you guys have said that men can give birth too, so now I suppose the 50% of the population that didn't have a say does get a say.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
keep
And
going.
again, we can go on this topic
Yeah.
forever. I was even having a hard time narrowing down what I wanted to say. But today we have this amazing video from AOC, even confusing herself the way we just did with the male birth giving, whatever. And it's quite funny. So we can bring that up.
An agenda that helps guaranteed health care, that helps ensure that people who do give birth that don't have the resources is controlling women's bodies and controlling people who are not cisgender men. This is about making sure that someone like me as a woman or any menstruating person in this country cannot make decisions over their own body.
Yeah, it's just hilarious.
I don't know if I can follow all of that.
It's watching videos that help you understand what a gift AOC has been to us.
Yeah.
We used to have a debate in the office about whether or not she was actually a gift and she should be promoted or not. And I was always of the opinion that she should be promoted because she shows exactly where that party is headed.
Yeah. You can just see the amazing logic she uses by by referring to the same group of people as three different things. So, and that was probably within the span of 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But my question for you guys is, will there ever come a point when we're talking on a policy level where the left actually sits back and goes, you know what, that doesn't make sense? Will they ever realize their logical inconsistencies?
Well, half of them already have. I mean, if we go back to the aftermath of 2020, sure, they may have won the presidency, but they lost a lot of seats that they didn't think they would. And so then we got that leaked phone call between all of, I don't remember if it was congressmen or representatives, but there was a leaked call between all of these different Democrats from Capitol Hill, and basically it was the moderates fighting against the progressives. The progressives were calling the moderates racists, and the moderates were telling the progressives, hey guys, let's not be so crazy. Let's not push socialism. Let's not push all this gender nonsense.
Getting our teeth kicked in over defund.
In 2024, we're going to lose everything if you guys don't wake up. And so, yeah, half of them already have woken up, but it's just they don't have the power right now. They don't have the stage that the progressives do. So the progressives are still calling the shots.
Yeah, they nurtured, the moderate Democrats nurtured this cancer in their midst, and instead of using chemo to get it out, essentially the way Buckley did with the Birchers, 50 years ago, they have let this go, and now the monster they created has come back and has taken over. They don't have control over it. Can you imagine being a somewhat liberal Democrat worried about getting reelected, and people you're serving in the House with call you a racist?
Yeah.
Because you're saying, please, can we not talk about putting the police out of commission?
Yeah.
I mean, the inmates have control of the asylum over there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different, to answer your question, there are a lot of different ways we could parse this. I think there are a couple of different groups of people here. One is a group of people who thinks that, socialism, communism never actually been tried right, and the circumstances weren't right. No, it'll actually work if we can just get the right new socialist man will emerge and all of that.
Oh, the Netherlands,
Silliness. Yeah, exactly. They're not socialist, but we'll pretend like they're socialist. It's unclear. But I think there's another group out there that absolutely realizes that this ends in misery. But they accept that for a couple reasons. First off, they think equality in misery is better than inequality in wealth.
Yeah.
And additionally, I think they are betting that at the end of the day, they come out in the tiny percentage of party members who actually can get good. They think they're going to come out and be
The
part of the
victors,
party.
be the top,
Yeah.
Be part of the
top
Communist
1% that they
Party,
hate so much. that
Yeah.
that's what they're hoping
I
for.
keep thinking about 1984, and they talk about Winston and the Victory cigarettes that just fall apart, and the Victory vodka that tastes horrible, and the Victory coffee that's terrible. And, these folks know that it's going to be like that for a lot of people, but they're also gambling that they'll be part of the party establishment and get the good stuff.
Yeah.
So part of it probably depends on how cynical you are.
Yeah.
But a good number of them do know what they're playing with. I don't think they know how dangerous what they're playing with is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and two, this goes to kind of our broader topic. As a society, we often talk about dismantling white supremacy, dismantling racism, and Allie Beth Stuckey posted this tweet one time, and it did really well on Twitter, and it basically said, hey, while we're at it and dismantling everything that has to do with white supremacy or racism, why don't we go after Planned Parenthood? And so that kind of brought me back to what I was thinking about with Margaret Sanger and all of the original feminists of the early 1900s who were like, hey, votes for women, these very like standard, ideas. And so today, abortion is the top topic for feminists, the top thing that everyone's fighting for. And I think it just really says something about society when that's the #1 feminist issue overall. And what does that really say about society when we're fighting for Margaret Sanger's legacy rather than the suffragettes who were abundantly pro-life? Now, this is a quote from Sanger. She says that she would use eugenics for the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual extinction of defective stocks, those human weeds which threaten the blooming of the finest flowers of American civilization.
Yeah.
So we're going to go and defend her, and we're going to go defend her legacy. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And so,
and she's referring to African Americans for those who might not be aware.
Yes, she is.
So.
And she also was encouraging, she also even said at one point that if you were a mother of 4, the best thing you could do for society was abort your 5th child.
Yeah.
Because, wow, it's just monstrous.
Yeah.
And these are the things that people don't think about and don't consider. But now let's parallel that with some of these early feminists. So the radical feminist, Susan B. Anthony, referred to abortion as child murder and said it was a means of exploiting both women and children. Then Alice Paul, who drafted the original version of the Equal Rights Act, agreed with Susan B. Anthony and said it was exploitive. Now, here's an excerpt, too, from Time magazine, which, again, is a pretty leftist publication, saying the same thing. And, again, the reason I'm hammering in on this so hard is because this was consistent. This was across the board. This wasn't a debate that was happening at the time. So Elizabeth Cady Stanton referred to abortion as infanticide and wrote, when we consider that women are treated as property, it is degrading to women that we should treat our children as property to be disposed of as we see fit. Victoria Woodhull, the first female candidate for president, wrote, every woman knows that if she were set free, she would never bear for an unwished for child, nor think of murdering one before its birth. And finally, Elizabeth Blackwell, which was the first woman to receive a medical degree in the U.S., wrote, the gross perversion and destruction of motherhood by an abortionist has filled me with indignation and awakened active antagonism. So my question for you guys is how have feminist movements just been hijacked over time, and why has the left clung to that so well?
Well, you got the 3 main waves of feminism. The first wave was just women need the right to vote. We all, people talk about the time prior to that as if women were just oppressed beyond belief, but, voting was tied with responsibilities like going to war and all these other things, and that was just how society was. But, then women wanted the right to vote, and they won that right to vote with first wave feminism, and then you came in with second wave feminism, which basically said women should have equal opportunity in the workplace. And also a good idea, they should have equal opportunity. But from there, from the end of second wave coming into third wave, that idea kind of got transformed into, if women aren't in the workplace as much as men, if women aren't doing all the same things as men, if women don't become men, then they are oppressed, and it's because of the patriarchy, and that's basically what third wave feminism says. So it's just morphed over time into what we now know as kind of the third wave intersectional feminism, which is just, it wants to destroy everything that's unique and powerful about femininity. So.
Yeah, it was a convenient vehicle for identity politics. You don't really have a bourgeois versus proletariat set of classes in the U.S. What you do have are biological differences, and so that was a convenient way for the left to divide people and turn them against each other. It is an unbelievably hard thing too, because you look at history, thousands and thousands of years of recorded human history, And the best we can tell, men and women always pretty much worked together the best they could.
Yeah.
It's you didn't have men in the house smoking a cigar while a woman was out there plowing the field.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, these were cooperative relationships, and in the space of 100 years, things radically changed.
Yeah.
And have gotten unbelievably more. Women have found more opportunities and are closer to equality of outcome than they've ever been in the past. And why in the world would we think that it could somehow be faster than it is? I mean, that's the weird thing. It's like, oh, we've not come far enough. It's like, well, we've not come far enough on anything. We're still trying to build a better society.
And the biggest change we've seen is not that we've overcome the evil patriarchy of the past. It's that our society developed to the point, technologically, economically, to where we can have equal opportunity to things. But the reason we didn't have that before wasn't because men were just oppressing women at every turn. It was because life itself was the most grueling thing you could possibly imagine, and everyone was doing what they could to get by.
And the technology that freed women from the home became available, and it simply had not existed before. So that's a good discussion. So, Michael, let's shift gears from that. We're talking about sort of theory and philosophy to something very, very practical, and that is a memorial to U.S. soldiers.
Very much today, So there was a California highway, last month. They decided to put up these 13 American flags to represent the 13 servicemen that died. And we actually have a graphic of that for you guys to look at. But it was beautiful. There's 13 American flags. There's one Marine Corps flag on the end. Each of the American flags represents one service member that died in Afghanistan during the withdrawal disaster, the Biden-led withdrawal disaster. And it's nice to see something like this, especially in the state of California, people supporting their veterans, supporting people that sacrifice themselves for us, for all of those Afghans that are now doomed to live under Taliban rule. But then on Monday, someone decided to go through and just tear them apart. And we have a picture of that for you too. And just looking at that image is just completely shocking, but to me, at this time in our history, not all that much surprising. At least definitely not to me. And you notice that the Marine Corps flag was definitely one of the biggest targets of that, which I think is pretty telling. But this really spoke to me, and it made me think about a lot of things that happened in my actual life. And while I'm really, I give a lot of my conservative opinions on social media and on Facebook, a lot of people close to me that have many of the same opinions don't, like my wife, for example. And one of the most political things she ever put out was simply a picture of a 9/11 memorial on her Facebook page. And she told me that there's no one post that has gotten more people to unfriend her than when she simply posted this 9/11 memorial. It wasn't saying any commentary, wasn't making any political posturing with it, simply just posted it, supporting the victims of 9/11 and with American flags, and people unfollowed her for it. And that is just where we are. Like, people don't like America. People don't like the American flag. People, and the big part of that is people don't like the U.S. military, and they think that they're this oppressive regime. How did we get here, and how are we going to get out of that?
I think we got here because, again, I don't know, this is completely me thinking on the fly, but if I had to guess, these are my initial thoughts, is that we have become, as part of society, just so enthralled with being the good guy and seeing other people as the bad guy all the time. Like, either that person is objectively good or objectively bad. We can't have a dialogue and say, hey, I disagree with you here. I think that might be morally wrong, but I think you're a good person. That's gone to the wayside. And so I think when society society gets this kind of tribalistic idea, and this kind of like started, I think, even back when Trump, or even showed it more in 2016 when Trump was elected, when people start to divide themselves into groups and section themselves off.
Yeah.
I think that's where this goes, because you may not agree with a military decision, but it's not the 18-year-old in Afghanistan who made the decision. So when you see those things in California where memorials are being completely defaced, that's what blows my mind, because you know what? You can disagree. You can say, hey, this was a bad decision, this was a bad move, but why are we like grouping in a bunch of 20 and 22-year-olds with those same people who made that decision?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's $1 million question, Michael, and I don't know the answer to it. My gut instinct is to say the 60s, because that's a, if nothing else, that's a great whipping boy and something to blame pretty much all of America's ills on. But I do think there's probably something to that. I think it was Peter Robinson who interviewed Bill Buckley before he died, and he was interviewing Buckley and I think Hitchens. And he asked Buckley if he regretted Vietnam. And, you know, Buckley had defended Vietnam, our involvement in Vietnam, very well for decades. And Buckley said he did wish we had not gone in. And I thought that was interesting. You know, look, if the media had covered Vietnam and what the Viet Cong were doing there to the South Vietnamese, that would have maybe been a different thing. But the left, I think the American government and the press were probably infiltrated with, or at least populated with useful idiots. And so when you see U.S. servicemen coming back in body bags and maimed and coming back drug addicts and not understanding why we were fighting that fight, I think it becomes very easy to begin to dislike the military complex, whatever that is. And in those days, it was pointed at the soldiers who were coming back. After that, the left kind of learned its lesson there, that you're going to burn yourself if you go after the foot soldiers, and now they have gone after the brass more. But essentially, the other thing is that the U.S. Army really does represent freedom marching anywhere. I mean, we don't go and enslave places. We just don't. We're the only empire in existence that really sucks at being an empire and has given up possessions over and over, trying to get them off of our plate. Normally we go places, clean them up, and then try to get out. And to the extent that you think that the left hates America and thinks America is a force for evil, then the United States, there's nothing more visible than the United States Army. That's a rambling answer.
And I think a lot of this has to do with kind of the things we were talking about with feminism, how feminism has devolved, and just all of this education stuff you're seeing in the news with critical race theory, with all of these things being taught at schools. It's been going on for decades, and you're seeing the results of that when people vandalize flags and when people talk about the country being the worst place ever. You know, they're judging America on a standard that no country in the history of the world has ever been judged on. And in reality, this is one of the best places to live in all of time in the entire world.
So it's, yes, you're completely right. An enormous part of it is critical theory that has been pounded into these kids in college, and that nothing is good in and of itself, and you must criticize things until there's nothing left. And the other thing is a profound lack of gratitude. And I think that goes hand in hand with not understanding history. You know, anybody in the history of the planet would have killed to live now. We live in the most magical time. Everything is getting better technologically, wealth-wise, everything. About 100,000 new people get water are lifted out of poverty per day on the planet. It has never been as good as it is, and getting that way as fast as it is. Yet it's like people think we're living in some kind of a hellhole.
Well, everything is getting better, and you know the things that aren't getting better. You know, the inequality that is happening.
Are getting better,
You know, the the things that aren't getting better, those are all the result of these people that are criticizing America in the first place. The reason a lot of poor people aren't getting out of poverty, the reason, minority communities are suffering, is because all of these people are criticizing America. They're telling these people it's America's fault, and then they're giving them just piles of cash and telling them, here, make your lives better, which makes things so much worse. And so it's
the Taliban case in point, Afghanistan.
At the root of this all, it's misinformation. People are being misinformed. And as it turns out, there's a new poll that came out recently that tells us the most informed people are the conservatives, are our audience.
So, folks, you have suspected it for a long time, as have we. If you have always felt like you have a better grip on the news and what's happening out there, that may be true. Fascinating new polling out from Rasmussen.
This is my favorite story.
This is a great story. Randy DeSoto here at the Western Journal, he put this together. I'm going to read you just a couple of graphs. A newly released Rasmussen reports poll finds that viewers of conservative cable news channels better understand the risk of death from COVID-19 than those who watch liberal channels such as CNN or MSNBC. The Johns Hopkins University of Medicine's website states that there is a 1.6% mortality rate for those diagnosed with the virus in the U.S. Rasmussen determined that 30% of American adults overall correctly estimated the death rate as being less than 2%, while 20% believed it to be between 2 and 5%. 17% thought that it ranged between 5 and 10%, and 19% believed it was greater than 10%. So we're getting close to an order of magnitude there. Those who reported watching conservative outlets tended to more accurately state the death rate. Quote, more viewers of Newsmax, 40%, and Fox News, 34%, correctly estimated COVID-19 mortality rates than viewers of CNN at 22% or MSNBC 24%, according to Rasmussen. Meanwhile, 38% of those who did not watch cable news responded with the right rate. Almost it's over a third, closing in on half. A similar breakdown was present between Republicans and Democrats, with the latter being more likely to overestimate the risk of death from COVID-19. Last thing, 28% of Democrats think over 10% die after being diagnosed with the illness, while just 14% of Republicans believe the same thing. So it's double in Democrats. So I think the real question, this poses all kinds of questions, but isn't one of the core ones, does it turn out that cable news is the group that is pushing the most misinformation out there? Can we take that away from this, Tara?
Yeah.
I guess you can. I mean, I don't know whether or not. I don't even know. I guess it just comes down to the fact that what I've been saying for the past few episodes is that outrage sells, fear sells. And I really do think that COVID has become the new golden child of modern media, because it's the new thing that they can always blame and always point to. They did that with Trump. They don't have that anymore. And now COVID-19 is the new way to make them feel like saints, because they definitely felt like saints when they could complain about Trump every day. But guess what? When you throw a sitting president of the United States off of Twitter, get rid of every outlet he can speak on, the news cycle that you once depended on suddenly becomes very dry. And it's by the same companies in big tech that you supported, that you propped up, that simultaneously is backing you. And so it's just really funny at the end of the day that like the little guys, the little newsrooms, kind of like Western Journal and Newsmax, that we're getting it right, and we're not by big tech. We're not by these billionaires.
Well, taking a really close look at these numbers, I think just is so interesting. So Newsmax, 40% of Newsmax viewers, that's the highest percentage of people that get it accurate. Then it's Fox News at 34%, MSNBC at 24%, and CNN at 22%, and then OAN, One America News, at 21%. And what I find so
interesting.
So basically this is what I get from this. So conservative news that tries to be accurate, that does its due diligence, is the best.
Yeah.
News that tries to be politically unbiased, Fox News is headed in that direction, although they're the most accurate of these guys. CNN, NBC, they're much less accurate. And then OAN, which is a little more sensationalist, a little more fast and loose with the facts, they're right there with CNN, with the unbiased, politically neutral CNN. Then Newsmax, which I would say probably the closest of those outlets to the kind of coverage we do here, and yet I still think a lot of editors and a lot of people in the newsroom would say we do our due diligence even more than them. But,
Sure.
you know, mainline conservative news, conservative opinions and conservative news, they're getting things the most accurate, more than anybody else.
So why is it that conservatives are getting this right?
Because I really do feel like a broken record here, but it's like when you look at things from a conservative perspective, it's what I've said time and time again. We don't view the government as God.
Yeah,
we don't
that's
view
a good
this
point.
world as it. Ultimately, our salvation is in Jesus Christ. So we're not constantly paralyzed with this fear over a virus with a 1% death rate. You know,
Yeah.
we have a higher power to look to. We don't need to look to MSNBC. We don't need to look to CNN. You know, I think it's like we see like a bigger picture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, some of these people are pretending like they're neutral. Some of these people are pretending like they're the truth, even though they're just pushing their agendas. The most accurate group are the conservatives who are doing their best to push the truth, and that's it. And that just, what it tells me is that all of these groups have incredible biases. Some of them are more open about it than others. And when you're open about it, you're allowed, it gives you a certain freedom to actually pursue the
Exactly.
truth.
Yeah.
Instead of, you know, selecting particular stories that fit your narrative or particular angles that fit your narrative or facts.
Yeah.
You actually tell the truth with the facts you're given. And that's what mainstream conservative news has done. And that's why those viewers, those readers, are, you know, they're the most accurate when it comes to knowing what COVID actually is.
Yeah, that poses an existential threat to the establishment media, and the establishment media and big tech know that.
Yeah.
There's a reason that they clamp down so hard on people like us, people like Newsmax. They'll leave Fox alone for the most part because they don't want to fight that fight. But the smaller, more independent groups, they will absolutely try to crush. We were talking before the show about how, at the end of the show, each time I remind you guys, if you're watching on YouTube, to click subscribe. And the reason we do that is that if you don't click subscribe, it is possible we can be shadow banned from you. And what that means is that YouTube will let us put the show on. They just won't ever tell anybody about it.
Yeah.
You won't be able to tell that the show came on. You'll have to visit the show's URL specifically on YouTube and see it that way, but you won't get a notification about it. It's the same thing that they used to do to Trump, that social media used to do to Trump. It's the same thing that they do to all sorts of other conservatives. And essentially they say, oh, well, we're going to let you post what you want as long as it doesn't violate our terms of service, but we're not going to show it to anybody.
Yep.
And essentially what they did was they built social media to train people to simply be shown things. So it's not, I'll throw my pen. So it's we don't think in terms of going to YouTube and looking at Western Journal's YouTube channel. We think in terms of what's on my feed, and they control the feed. So if you are watching on YouTube, do be sure to click that subscribe button. And after you click that, there's a little bell that shows up. Click the bell. That's the part that's going to make sure you get notified when we go live. And remember, they can pull the plug on us at any time, folks. YouTube can simply decide they're not interested in us anymore, and poof, we are gone, and we won't even be able to tell you about it on YouTube.
No.
We will simply be gone. And it is getting more and more dangerous out there. Amazon is now saying that they're going to be looking more carefully at who's using their web cloud services. So you could see websites like ours actually be cut off at the knees because they just people won't host it. So folks, it's sad, but we are in a place where we are completely dependent. Well, that's not completely true. We are completely dependent on God, first, foremost, and only. That said, we're in a practical position where the powers that be, big tech, can pull the rug out from under us. There is a way you can help us with that.
Yep.
Well, there are a couple ways. First off, just by spending time on the site, reading our pieces, that is fantastic, and that helps us fund what we do. But if you feel led to take a more direct role in supporting us, please go to westernjournal.com/join. That's westernjournal.com/join. Through there, you will be able to get access to information, access to content that we don't put out for everybody. You will also be supporting us as we move forward and try to fight back against big tech and survive in a truly crazy news environment. If you don't know this, a few years ago, after Trump won, Facebook cut our traffic by about 80%.
Yeah.
And it changed us. It changed us. And we are completely dependent on God month to month. We don't have a big billionaire behind us. We're a small family-owned company. But that does keep us independent, which is absolutely fantastic. We're not beholden to anybody. We exist because of you. If you guys didn't watch, if you guys didn't read, we would not be here. So thank you for doing that. We are so grateful for you, and it is not lost on us that you guys essentially make what we do possible. We want to continue doing it. So thank you for your support. That is it for this Wednesday. We will be back Friday because we are here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. For Michael, for Tara, for everybody in the booth, I'm Josh Manning. We will see you Friday.
Welcome back to WJ Live. And I'm joined today by assignment editor Joey Chester, as well as crack reporter Michael Austin.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.